I work in reception for a small office and occasionally get asked to run errands for managers whilst out on the post run. On this day, I was asked to stop by the general practitioner for my boss and check on a repeat prescription as the pharmacy hadn't received it. I go to reception, ask for an update, and am asked to take a seat whilst they find out for me. Dear Redditors, I'm sure you can guess what happens next. That's right, the doors to one of the general practitioner offices opens and a doctor steps out to call the next patient. As they do so, their eyes lock with mine. General practitioner: Where have you been? We've been waiting for you to arrive all day. Me, confused: I'm sorry, you have... General practitioner: Yes, you were meant to be here hours ago. Why didn't you call? Me, still confused: I'm sorry, I'm just getting a prescription update. I didn't realize I needed to call ahead of time. General practitioner: Wait, so you don't show, don't call, and now you've decided to pop in and get a prescription update? Unacceptable behavior. Get in the office and I'll see you when I'm finished with this patient. I finally realized they had mistaken me for an employee. I'm guessing someone on reception or in admin. I'd be surprised if they thought I was a fellow general practitioner. Well, having read a few I don't work here lady stories, I knew I had to set the record straight, but that it may not be easy work. Me: I'm sorry, you have me confused for someone else. I work around the corner, not here. General practitioner: Yes, you do, but keep that attitude up and you won't much longer. Me: No, I really don't. General practitioner: Yes, you do. I think I know who works at my practice. Me: Okay then, what's my name? General practitioner stops and looks at me, then stutters: Amy? Me: Nope, sorry, that's definitely not me or even remotely close to my name. At this time, the receptionist had put the phone down and called me over. The general practitioner followed me, curious or hoping to catch me lying. I'm not sure. Receptionist: Thanks for waiting. The boss's name's prescription will be ready at the pharmacy tomorrow. Me: Oh, that's great. Thank you. I'll let them know. General practitioner: Penny finally drops, so you really don't work here? Me: No, I don't. I have to get back to my boss and give them this update. Goodbye. And off I popped back to the office where I am currently chuckling at finally having a story to share in this sub. Back in 2019, while I was living in a dormitory, we had a roommate who was in his 30s, and he seemed to be someone working as a daytime worker at a manufacturing company. Every single time he speaks on his phone, he was so loud that the entire floor could hear him, and everyone in the room would have to constantly remind him to tone it down. He was a 150 decibel noise machine. I used to work in IT as a support engineer, and I had to work rotating shifts. So every time I had night shifts, I needed to sleep during daytime. Given the amount of stress at work and the time my body took to adjust to different schedules, my mental and physical health was a big-time mess. Sleep is the only thing that I had under my control, or so I thought. This guy has so many calls every single day, and he answers every call inside this small dorm room. Most of them are not even related to work from what I could remember. I politely asked him so many times to answer his phone in the corridor outside when I or anyone was asleep, but it felt like talking to a stone. He acts the same way again and again and again and again. Not sure if he thought that everyone would get tired of asking him and then eventually adjust to this nonsense. Well, I am not giving up. One day, I was in an awful mood. Zero energy and no time for nonsense. I desperately needed my 8-hour sleep, if not at least 6 hours of good sleep. But our guy was on leave, stayed at the dorm, and had to speak with his entire family tree. He was so annoying, loud, arrogant, and totally careless that I just couldn't take it. I first gave him an angry look from my sleep. He acted like it was nothing. I asked him to speak slowly or to go outside until he was done with all his calls, as I was not able to sleep at all. He turned his back on me to avoid any more interactions and went on with his call, speaking louder than ever. Well, I tried to be respectful. Now it's time for me to be a witch. I set an alarm for the next 5 minutes. My phone had this annoying rooster alarm tone. I dialed up my phone's alarm volume to the highest, and I waited. He was still speaking on his phone when the alarm went off. I woke up, held my phone in my hand, and never stopped the alarm. It was deafening in my ears, but I just held on to it. He thought I'd stop it eventually. When it automatically stopped in a minute, I replayed the alarm tone, again and again and again. He looked at me, but I acted like he didn't exist. I just kept playing this annoying rooster tone. The speaker on the other end of his call probably asked him about the noise, and he loudly said that it was someone's alarm, as if to tell the person, me, in the room that he was getting disturbed. I did not stop it. He stared at me, but I just replayed the deafening alarm tone with a poker face without looking at him until he left the room to answer his calls. That's all. He never spoke a word after this, and in the next couple of days left our dorm room. It was so peaceful after that. I slept happily ever after. I went into a very large feed store for the very first time and was a little overwhelmed by the size of the place. A clerk directed me to the medications, and I was looking through them when two women in their early 30s, who I will call entitled Karen 1 and entitled Karen 2, spotted me and walked over. Entitled Karen 1. Excuse me, but I'm looking for something for my horse. He has some sort of problem that I don't remember, with some piece of horse anatomy that's unknown to me. Me. Sorry, but I don't work here. Entitled Karen 1. But you're standing there in front of the medicines. Me. I'm shopping. I don't work here. Sorry. Entitled Karen 1 and entitled Karen 2 left for a few minutes, then returned. Entitled Karen 1. We've decided that since we thought you worked here, you need to help us anyway. Entitled Karen 2 nodded. That's when I knew this situation might just turn into a Reddit post. Me. I'm sorry, but I don't know anything about horses. If you need help, you will need to ask somebody who works here. Entitled Karen 1. But I can't find anybody? And you're here. What's that in your hand? Me. It's something to stop feather plucking in chickens. Entitled Karen 1. Does it help horses? Me. What? Entitled Karen 1 gave a loud sigh. We need help with our horse. Will any of these help? She pointed to the shelf. Me. I don't know anything about treating horses. Maybe you could call your vet. They might be able to help you. Entitled Karen 1. But vets cost money, and they'd probably want us to bring him in. Entitled Karen 2 nods again. Just tell me what you think will help. Me. But I don't work here, and I don't know anything about treating horses. I decided to walk away and come back later. Maybe they would find something for their horse's problem, and I would be able to shop in peace. A little while later, I returned to the same aisle, and it was empty. Now, to get a few things for the chickens. But nope. They spotted me and were headed back for another round. That's when I knew this post would probably happen. Entitled Karen 1. Look, we need something for our horse. If you didn't know anything about medicines, you wouldn't be in this aisle. We don't want to call the vet because that's expensive and we're not taking him in. If you don't know, why don't you call somebody who does? Entitled Karen EK2. Yeah, we can't afford that. We're not going to the vet. We just need some medicine for him. Me. You want me to call a vet for you? It sounds like you need to call your vet. Maybe they could advise you over the phone because I don't know anything about treating horses. I am here looking for stuff for my chickens, and I know nothing about treating horses. A clerk must have heard me raise my voice because he came over and entitled Karen 1 and entitled Karen 2 immediately went over to him, complaining because their horse needed help. I wouldn't help them, and they did not want to pay for a vet. I headed straight for the registers. I just hoped that poor horse got the help he needed. This story is one I was debating if I should ever talk about. It happened years ago, and I was a Moro in elementary school. The story. It was a hot summer day, and I was visiting the entitled grandpa, who is the child's grandfather, who is also my grandma's older brother, in his cabin, a tradition we did at least twice a year. Once in the summer and once in the winter, we went to a river to go tubing. This is basically the highlight of visiting up there every summertime we've gone up there. While waiting for the parents to all be ready and the tubes set up, we, myself, a direct cousin, and a few more distant cousins, play in the pretty cold river water, which is surprisingly an important detail for later. I was playing with my cousins while my cousin, the entitled child, waddled her 5-year-old butt into the water. The entitled grandpa just got her all set to float around in her life jacket. Once she got used to the water from about the middle upper legs, she reached into the water, pulling out some of the rocks at the bottom of the shallow water. The rest of us were just splashing each other, swimming around, even joking about trying to swim upstream when we started getting pelted by the rocks. We look over to see the entitled child throwing whatever rocks she could grab at us, smooth, sharp, or somewhere in between. I, being the closest to her, go to wade towards her, dodging a rock or two as I approach. My mistake came when I got up next to her to talk to her. Why was this a mistake? She got wet. Now, call this a tangent. Skip this if you must, but a lot of us tend to need to slowly wade into the water or jump right in. Once the water hits a certain point, you really feel how cold it is, and you get used to that initial cold feeling. You can swim with water at that level. She got wet up to her small chest and life jacket, and being a 5-year-old child, she screamed from the cold. Before even taking a second to assess the situation, the entitled grandpa grabs me by my right arm, my main hand arm, and drags me out of the water. I could feel my arm shifting in uncomfortable ways as he basically dragged me a full circle around him. I thought he was going to dislocate it before I even knew what dislocating something was. I fell onto the rocky boat launch ground. He then went on a shouting fit about how I shouldn't touch his daughter, how I probably hit her and made her scream. Could I make out his words? No. I was already in tears from his harsh grab, and things are a little hazy due to how old this tale is, but his yelling was so loud that it literally blocked out everything and everyone else. No input from anyone else made it in, just this grown, strong, ex-military-looking man screaming at a 10-year-old. The instant I could, which was when he was done yelling at me, I ran. I ran right to my grandma, and when she found out what happened to me, she was pissed. She immediately gathered up me, my cousin I was directly related to, and my uncle, and we drove back to the cabin, missing the tubing. We got back to the cabin while I was still crying. My father was just arriving at the cabin. When we got back there, he immediately knew something was wrong. My grandmother handed me to him, and they looked me over. My arm was strained, but not broken or dislocated. I just had to take it easy for the next day. My knees were scraped and I was a little bruised. When I was asked if I wanted to stay at the cabin by my father, I said no. I wanted to go home and get away from this place. My father ends up spending no time at the cabin. With the family up there, he just has to take me home and spend the rest of the weekend with me. He didn't seem mad at me at all. Now comes the fun part. My mother. When she found out what happened, she exploded. She yelled at my father at first until we told her that he was innocent. He had just got up there. She then called my grandma, got the story, and was visibly fuming because she could not get in contact with him. Despite it being his cabin, it was far from his phone service's reach. So we settled and tried to not let this drag down my childhood memories. My grandma just had the sweet spot for service, and the entitled grandpa wasn't at the cabin at that time. From what I heard, the entitled grandpa got chewed out hard. I went no contact with him until I moved, finally, at my father's new housewarming party. The entitled grandpa approaches me and formally apologizes for what happened all that time ago. I was very much uncomfortable being around him, but being a forgiving person, I did say I forgave him, even if I didn't want to spend time with him anymore. The entitled child is already growing up to be a problem child. She was spoiled, and now she's getting into all sorts of bad places. She's definitely coming up like your average teenager, still spoiled. I don't really care for her or her family.